So normally people, as I said earlier, people say reformasi as just a fight between Anwar and Mahathir, the Prime Minister. But in my argument using Gramsci, I want to say that reformasi is not just a political problem between two leaders fighting. Reformasi actually reveals a more fundamental social crisis in Malay social identity. And what is the conflict? The conflict is that earlier I said Mahathir want to modernize the country, right? So many Malays actually deep inside were not happy with the kind of modernization process that Mahathir instituted. This group of people were not happy. The Islamist Malay. They feel that the country become more materialistic, more westernized. They feel that Islam and modernization should be more balanced. Yeah? So that's why you can interpret reformasi was that social struggle within Malay community erupted or expressed itself in this political problem called reformasi. Two social groups. I come to Gramsci now. Sorry for taking so long on the history, but that's actually my main argument. If I don't lay out the history, we cannot see Gramsci in a different light. So Gramsci started 2007 was the first Gramsci rally because as elections is not fair. The civil society movement formed this thing called Gramsci in order to bring elections reform. But again, election reform, notice the same word reform. Reform comes from reformasi. The Malay word for reform is reformasi. So electoral reform is just an extension from the political reform movement in 1998. And I want to highlight one other way that Gramsci helped us to understand how political activism actually worked in Gramsci. One of the more recent reinterpretation of Gramsci's work is a British cultural theorist called Stuart Hall. Right? I think some of you, if you're in cultural studies, you know Stuart Hall. Stuart Hall also employs a Gramscian perspective in his cultural studies analysis. So basically, Stuart Hall says that each individual, we are not just one identity. In different social situations, you take on different positions. Example I give, maybe just from personal example. In Japan, a Japanese person, when he asked me where am I from, I said I'm from Malaysia. Immediately in their mind, they position me, you are Malaysian. Alright, whatever that means. Malaysian, either you are from a developing country, lower than Japan. You basically both socially, economically, your identity as Malaysian is being positioned by the person who you are interacting with, right? But when I go back to Malaysia, if I go to the government office to renew my identification card, for example, they will say, "Are you Chinese?" Right? So in Malaysia, the state ideology will position me as Chinese. So that's just illustration of what Stuart Hall means. Identity is a product of articulation where, depending on the context, you take up different positions. So every person carries potentially many identities in your subjectivity. Right? To put it in more philosophical terms, there can be many selves. You have more than one identity. So we don't have this static, stable, uniform identity. In different social situations, you take different identifications. Yeah? So that's Stuart Hall's extension of Gramsci's theory of ideological identification. And I think to understand per se, we also need to understand the concept of articulation, where Hall defines it as articulation is where ideological elements, they connect together in certain specific situations, and they make a connection to specific political subjects. I actually asked Raymond to check out what articulation is in Mandarin. Can you say something? It's on.
Okay. 如果根据 It's on.
Oh, it's on.
No problem. I just share. OK， 如果根据这个是文化研究，
我要录音
啊，
我要录音。I
Try
record.
this. Try this.
Hello，好的
Yeah.
OK。如果根据这一本，是因为嘉明他所使用的那一本书，其实是来自这一本的，而这本是交大的陈光新教授和其他学者一起访问那个斯图尔霍斯的访谈录来的。在这里面使用是整合理论的结合理论。不过的话，这结合理论这是目前我所能够找到的翻译啊。虽然说可能我觉得这个整合理论，我个人认为还是有翻译不到位问题。不过我所目前找到的，大多数还是以整合理论作为这个 articulation 的正式的翻译，所以就暂时这样使用起来。
Okay. Yeah. Anyway, I explain what articulation is. Okay. To see how this concept of articulation is being used to understand per se, I want to introduce actually 3 activists. Malay, they are based on the state understanding. These are Malay persons, but they became very popular during the per se 2 and 3 period. And by telling their story, we will see how the theory of articulation is actually practiced. First person, A. Samad Said. He's, how I say, Malaysia, Malay literature, like novel, poem. He's the literary laureate, the one that the country give you an award for being someone who give a lot to Malay culture. So he is a writer, a novelist, and poetry writer. He became an icon, popular, symbolic icon during Bersih, because he was the co-chairperson of the Bersih committee. But this man, he's already in his 80-something years old, as you see, born in 1932, very old, right? Very gentle. No one thought that he's political in his, how to say, his whole career was a literary figure. But suddenly in the Bersih period, he was very active in the political civil society movement. So my question is, why suddenly this guy becomes so popular? And this is some of the transcript of the interviews I took in my research to explain how articulation works. So I asked him the question, right? So Pak Samad means uncle, you know, in very Why? How come for 80 years you were never openly political? Suddenly during the Bersih social movement, you are so active and so brave in challenging. He has his own practice of articulation, how he makes sense of the situation that he's in. So he said that because the Malay groups attack Amiga and Bersih, I feel that I need to enter in order to provide a shield, a protection for Amiga, to show that Bersih is multiracial and it's actually a civil society movement not based on any particular race. He also said that many many writers, right, in history take part in social movement. So he said, yeah, I begin to understand my role also as a literary figure, but I also can, normally, he said, I'm not a man who want to be in the middle of the turmoil or disturbance. But I feel that I have no choice because I need to try my best to rationalize the government. So in Pak Samat's point is that Malaysian government has already become mad, crazy, right? He sees his role as, I'm here to try to rationalize the government, make them more reasonable, because I am a reasonable literary figure, right? And he said that, yeah, I was very reluctant to enter. I'm already 80 over years old. Why should I involve myself in all this political problem? But I feel there is no choice. But later, once I enter, I see that this new role as the social activist really fits my personality. I mean, this is what he said. And the example of Gramsci is that, to explain how articulation and subjectivity works, is that Gramsci too, I said, it's a, you can say it's a grandchild of Reformasi, right? 1998 Reformasi, reform movement. Then Gramsci, 2008 onwards, is also fighting for reform. In this case, specifically election reform. What is its connection with Pak Samat, right? What is the connection with this Malay writer? It is this. The concept of articulation shows that ideology discovers the subject at a certain specific moment. It enables Pak Samat to make sense of his situation and to locate allies and opponents and to organize. Okay, here it's a bit philosophical, but let me try my best to clarify what I want to say. Imagine Gramsci as a movement is also have ideology, right? The ideology is to reform the elections. So this ideology, at the right time, it gave Pak Samat, the writer, like a map, a social map to understand his role and identity at that point in history. So if I put it a different way, earlier I said Marxist, right? The traditional Marxist view. How would a political person act? They say a person will act according to your class interests. Very easy. No need to even do any analysis. You don't need to check you don't need to interview the person, right? Or you're a worker, you must be, fighting for working class interests. But Gramsci is saying, ideology doesn't work that way. In fact, a certain historical development of a movement, at the right time, it became a kind of social map which provides the individual a sense of orientation or understanding of your role in history. So it's like Pak Samat, why didn't he become active in the 1980s, for example? Why didn't he become active in 1990s in Reformasi? He was never openly, in a social activist circle. But my point is saying that at the right moment in the Gramsci period, Pak Samat's identity become articulated, linked together with the Gramsci ideology. So he have a new sense of his political subjectivity as a result of the development of Gramsci.